recording.
Okay,
There we
I'm gonna
go.
go on mute.
No problem. And then we'll wait a few minutes to see who shows up. Looks like people are joining now, so that's awesome. I'm gonna decline my note taker. I don't think I'll be needing that today. All right, good. Lots of people are lots of note takers. Okay, I'll let the note takers in. We're gonna make this public anyway, so I like that some people told me they couldn't make it, but their note taker came. That's cool. Okay. Matthew. Oh, nope. Surprised you there, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I'm on a train in Copenhagen, so I thought I'd put
Oh
myself
yeah,
on mute, but there we go.
that's cool. Yeah, some people are like, "Oh, I'm calling in from the hotel in Vancouver," or I guess people are saying their chat bot. So this will be this will be fun. See, I got a few other people are joining. Uh, all right. All right, what do we got? We'll give people one more minute and then I will get started. I see Catherine on the chart today. That's good. A
Hi,
few
I'm
other people. Hi, how are you? Where are you calling from?
Virginia.
Okay, you're not on a train somewhere in Copenhagen.
No, but I want to be.
Sounds nice, right? Sam's in the chat. Hi, Sam. All right, fantastic. All right, I'm gonna get started because people will probably uh, trickle in as I present. And so yeah, so welcome. This is the first time I've done one of these webinars. I want to do them once a month because I think they're fun. And I think it'd be a great opportunity to bring people together, share knowledge, get feedback from people in the community about what they're doing with their startups and their ideas regarding like marketing and AI. And so, of course, for this one, I titled it "Every Marketing Channel Sucks Right Now: Why Andrew Chen of A16 is Right and What You Can Do About It." Um, And just quickly about me. So, for those that don't know, I have 20 years experience in Silicon Valley, worked for a number of like high tech startups. Not all of them were success. In fact, more were failures than were successes, but worked for a couple of notable ones. InMobi is one that people have heard of. Their first unicorn, headquartered in India, raised $250 million from SoftBank. If you guys are familiar with them, they've done a lot of investment, perhaps notable in WeWork, the other investments that they're both famous for. A couple other companies on there I want to point out. TapSense was a startup that I joined on the founding team. Was the, let's say, fourth employee, only person without an engineering degree. Did that for a couple of years. It was eventually sold to Wish.com. That was a really excellent early stage experience. And I was also VP of marketing at Sojourn. Worked there for 5 years. Sojourn was a rather large tech company, had big tech team, big marketing team. So got to experience what it's like to work in a large company. And I don't know how many people on the call are familiar with Andrew Chen and who he is, but he's had a newsletter and he's done these updates for a long time. And this article that he wrote recently is actually a recap or a revised version of one he wrote maybe 10 years ago with a kind of similar analysis just about how marketing is becoming more challenging. Like if you look at it over the long term, a lot of the performance metrics are in decline. So everyone knows that like band rads when they first launched had like 50% click-through rate, and right, and over time they've declined. Same thing with email. It used to be pretty easy to get your emails through to people. Then Google changed the interface. They put different filters in place to stop spam. So it's made it much harder to send email and be successful with email marketing. And you can see the same things happening in nearly every channel, right? Advertising is becoming more expensive. People run ad blockers. There's just headwinds everywhere you look in marketing. And so from my perspective, I think what this means for startups and particularly early stage companies, you need to be unique. You need to be unconventional. You need to do really interesting things if you want to break through. The reality is for large companies, I think Andrew was pretty clear about this in his article, is like it just means their costs are going to go up. There's not really any way around it, right? If like email is less efficient, click-through rates go down, ads get more expensive, you're just going to have to spend more. But obviously, that is not an option for a startup, and that's why I push unconventional approaches, things that don't scale. And this presentation will go into a bunch of different ideas that I've used and I've seen other people use to help market an early stage company. And just to be super clear about what we're going to talk about today is like these are not ideas that are going to work. If you're a marketing manager at Google or Salesforce, those companies are in a very different situation. These are really for early stage companies, bootstrapped companies, pre-seed companies, maybe people that have raised series, a small series A and are still trying to be nimble and need to move quickly and are able to be unconventional and do really interesting things, right? And so the first idea I want to talk about is Discord. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this. I actually recently appeared on a live chat that a large Discord community was running, and it was a really fun experience. I think what's interesting about Discord is they've really filled the gap that Slack I perhaps had at one point with like communities, people doing really interesting things like outside of the workplace. Like Slack had this market, and Discord is the one that really, I think, stole the torch from them during the pandemic. And so I don't know how much time people spent on there, but there's all kinds of really interesting communities you can participate in. So that's one way to market your product or be successful on Discord as a founder. It's just be a resource, be someone who is available, who is like participating in the community. And of course, you can always start your own, right? That takes more effort, energy. You really need to like be dedicated to it. It needs to be a fit for what you're doing. So the one that I did recently was for a vibe coding gaming community. That makes a lot of sense as Discord's history is in the gaming space, right? So it's a good fit for them. So the idea is like hyper personalized outreach, perhaps through video. This is something I've been working with some of my customers on and that I've had a lot of success with. And this is a very good example of like an idea that just doesn't scale, right? So research your top 50 prospects, and then record a video that addresses their pain points, talks about how your product can help solve their problems and send them out. Loom has a really interesting feature. I don't know how far people have gotten into using it, but you can create a GIF version that you can dump into the email, and it looks cool. It shows like a little kind of preview of the video, and then Loom actually has tools that will let you track the open. So it can be really effective in terms of like giving you some metrics and helping you understand if those videos and that outreach is getting through to people. Dominate a micro vertical first. This is another thing that I've been talking to lots of founders about and something I'm a big advocate for. And I actually think AI in some ways is changing the game here as well. It's enabling, I think, people to go much more niche than perhaps was possible in the past. And I put this example here, right? That like, people focusing on healthcare. I see this all the time. There's even a presentation last night. I was at the AI house in Seattle listening to demos of founders talk about their startups. And there was a healthcare startup. And this is a great example of like healthcare in particular. I see people focus on healthcare, but they don't, I think, go niche enough, right? So maybe not just be for healthcare, but be for small dentist offices of 5 to 30 people, right? Get real specific about who you're targeting. And I use this example of Doximity as one that I think is a great model for people to look at. Obviously, this works outside of healthcare, but I think healthcare is a really good example of where I see a lot of startups, and I don't think people are going niche enough. So Doximity is a LinkedIn for doctors, right? So serves a really obvious need. Doctors have all kinds of certifications and things that perhaps LinkedIn doesn't support or support to the level that would be useful for people who are a doctor and want to go on there and like list all the certifications. And of course, if you are the person who hires doctors, right, like a hospital, it's really important for you to understand like what are they certified in? Like that is actually how they fill those jobs, right? They need a radiologist, and I don't know exactly what the licensing is. It's probably even different state by state, but that stuff's really critical, right? And LinkedIn does not offer the ability for you to filter doctors and get that granular, right? So I really like Doximity as an example of a really successful hyper niche company. They're a public company too. They're quite successful. They've been around for some time, and I don't think that many people are familiar with them. So I wanted to use them as like what I think is the shining example of like going niche, like, hey, job boards, communities for people to get hired, but do it just for doctors and do it really well. To run a podcast tour, this is an obvious one, but something that I don't think people are doing as much of as they were perhaps during the pandemic when everybody and their grandma was launching podcasts. But podcasts are an excellent way to provide a really in-depth kind of explanation of your product, talk about your history, and really connect with users. Um, there's lots of podcasts out there. There's lots of tools where you can like find them. What I recommend people do is build a list of podcasts that they think could be a good fit, and then just reach out. And you'd be surprised with the kind of response that you'll get. The cool thing too with this approach is like, I think it's much more efficient and effective for founders than starting their own. I think starting your own podcast is really hard. It takes a long time to build an audience. And there's so many podcasts out there that you can participate in. Why not use that as your marketing strategy, right? I've even seen people create playlists of all of the podcasts that they've appeared on. But then you could even like market and promote that, or you could edit it down into like little clips. There's a lot you could do with this content as well. So it might be some upfront work to go and find them, pitch yourself, and then of course appear on them. But you have that content and it will live on and you could do a lot with it, right? So pretty simple idea, but one that I think is really effective. I think this also works really well for B2B SaaS, right? That's the area that I focus on. There's a lot of business podcasts out there that people will listen to, and they want to hear an in-depth explanation from a founder about a tool or a product that solves their problem. All right, VIP beta program. Maybe offer one-on-one call with the founder. This is something obviously I do to promote my business. Something I've seen other startups do quite well. Would I put Blue Sky, right? So Blue Sky did a really good job at creating a beta program to get people excited about. They did not have one-on-one founder calls though, although might have made the thing a much bigger success if they were to offer that with Jack Dorsey. I think a lot of people would have signed up for that. And Jack is perhaps my favorite example of like founder-led marketing, founder-led sales. He has an incredible reputation, which he absolutely deserves. And I think he's done a really good job. And I think he's a great model for founders out there who want to take advantage of that. And you can see the value that he brings, right? Like the cost of acquisition for the startups that he's created are much lower than other startups because he has such an incredible reputation and spent a lot of effort and energy building that, right? So again, another example of an idea that perhaps is a lot of effort, but is well worth it to build your reputation as a founder. And then private beta programs, VIP programs, Clubhouse is the other one. I think I mentioned it somewhere else in this presentation, but these things have been really effective at driving, users, building a lot of enthusiasm and excitement. Like people feel really proud to be part of the private beta. And anyone who signs up for a private beta is going to have the right expectations. about how the product works, right? So I recommend this for like lots of early stage companies where maybe you're still trying to figure things out about the product. You don't have everything solved. This is a great way to get people who are enthusiastic, positive, and have the right expectations about the type of service that they're going to get from you. Partner with complementary businesses. I mean, this isn't another obvious one and something that even like really large companies do. So Spotify and Uber had a partnership. You see lots of big companies partner. I'm old enough to remember when uh, Pepsi and Burger King teamed up because McDonald's and Coke teamed up and were the exclusive providers of products for each other. But it is something that I think is pretty easy to do in the startup space. Find other companies who have a complementary product, perhaps appeal to the same audience and partner together and do cross promotion. It can be webinars, it can be emails, it can be other types of offerings. I did this in the mobile app space where we had a ad network SDK that we were promoting, and we wanted developers to install on their apps to run ads. And we partnered with other people that offered SDKs that had other types of functionality that were perhaps complementary to what we're doing. And then we did lots of actually promotion together. We did events, we did emails, we did all kinds of stuff, right? So I think this is a great idea for startups. And I would continue to like, or I would really push for folks who have the same audience. If they don't have the same audience, it might be a way to like learn or get feedback, but ultimately you need to find people that are targeting the same customers as you are. Dominate an industry Slack channel. All right. So when you're establishing expertise on Slack, this is one that I have a customer recently who did a very good job with. There was a channel that he followed, and I think he pitched the person that managed the channel on doing a presentation, and they went for it, right? And he got like a lot of visibility in the community there. So I know we talked about Discord earlier. There still are a lot of like open Slack channels that are perhaps not associated with a company that you can be on. And yeah, reach out to the founders, reach out to the organizers. You can like manage a section. I've also seen people like allow sponsorships. That's another way to really take advantage of a Slack community that you're a part of. And obviously, like if you just position yourself as an expert in there, maybe repost some content that you're developing for other places to help give some credibility to your expertise. There's a point where I was spending a lot of time on these, maybe 2 years ago, as I was reposting a lot of content that I had written for LinkedIn and things I've done the blog, and I got great response. And they're fun because you can like use all the features in Slack to engage with people that is perhaps not as easy to do on like X or on LinkedIn. Yeah, so host virtual office hours. Uh, what this presentation today is actually a much more robust version of how this originally started for myself. I was doing some office hours, chatting with people, and then I thought, like, why don't I provide some content? And I thought, why don't I provide some more robust content? Ended up doing a full-on presentation, right? The other thing I've done with my office hours is turned it into this X chat that I was doing with my good friend Paul. We were doing it as an X space, although X spaces seem to have a lot of challenges when it comes to the technology. So we moved it to a live stream. But office hours is something that a lot of people do. Even Jason Calacanis with This Week in Startups, if you're a fan of his podcast, he holds office hours. He'll have founders come on and ask questions publicly on his podcast, and he'll give them answers. So this is a really simple one that you can even promote on your LinkedIn. There's a lot of ways to kind of get traction with this and let people show up and just kind of ask questions, and you can help answer them based on your expertise, and like maybe even work in your product or solution uh, into the uh, uh, into the answer. All right, create a powered by widget. for Chrome. So a lot of people have been doing this recently. I've seen a few examples, but the one that I really like to talk about is the Chat GPT plugin that they created for Chrome. I've been using this now for I want to say like I want to say a year. I'm like, is it that old? So they created a plugin that uh, took over your Google search um, features and functionality on Chrome and just pushed it to Chat GPT. And so I originally did this because I wanted to just get more experience and comfort level with using AI and using Chat GPT. And so I forced myself to use that instead of Google, which was really awkward in the beginning. And now it's become second nature and I'm very comfortable with it. And Google's the one that I find difficult to use. But there's a lot of other ways that you could use a Chrome plugin or some other type of widget to promote your service. I saw a startup last night that had a Chrome shopping plugin that they were promoting. Honey is another one that was acquired for pretty significant amount of money, right? So the whole Chrome plugin space, there's a lot of potential that's built an entire business. But if you have a tool that you could extend the functionality into Chrome or make some kind of like I call them meme apps, sometimes a simple app that can help just get people into the ecosystem of whatever you're building. I think it's an excellent way. And you might be lucky and you might get something that will go viral and scale pretty significantly. Working with someone recently who's doing a it's not a Chrome plugin, but it's a different type of like tool that allow people to do it automates the process of like when you post something on social media and say, hey, reply with this word or comment or do this in order to get this free resource. And they have a way to kind of like automate that. So interesting kind of marketing technology extension to an existing MarTech product. All right, number 10, moving right along here. So build a referral based weight system. So this is the Clubhouse example that I thought was one of the best executed launches I've ever seen, right? So they have this really complex invite only system where you could like invite other people. And I don't know if everyone else had the same experience I did, but that weekend that Clubhouse launched, it was just everywhere. And it was like really impressive, I think, and really well executed. So depending on the app that you're building or the type of business that you have, this is something that I think you should consider, particularly around the launch of like a new feature, or if you're just launching in general, right? Like coming up with some kind of like wait list. If you can get a referral system built into it, I think it's really fantastic. I'm going to pause here for some water for a second. All right. Okay. Clubhouse launch. What's next? All right. Guerrilla marketing tactics at industry conferences. So this was something that I had done a couple of years ago at a small tech conference, and they allowed us to actually buy what's called a seat drop. So before people go into the main session, they put a printed sheet onto every seat into the auditorium. And it was fairly like low cost sponsorship, and we did something that was very direct, like talked about like our product offering. And I think we had a special for the conference with like a QR code and stuff. And boom, huge. Like we had a giant response to it. So everyone walks into the auditorium, they sit down and they're waiting for the thing to start and they're bored. So they pick up the sheet, they all start looking at it, and everyone started like scanning in the QR code. And we had meetings go into the night with people that had saw our sheet the conference. And I love this example because like I feel like people in general are not creative about how they address their trade show marketing. Everyone just buys an expensive booth and they kind of like stand around and they talk to other people who are just trying to sell them products that they would sell to themselves. And it's not really an effective use of marketing, but there are all kinds of ways to do like low cost things that will really have a big impact on your business. And the seat drop one is one of my favorites. The other thing you can do is that they don't always list this on the sponsorship packages, right? So if you call the trade show organizers and the thing that they'll send you, this isn't always one that is listed, but you can ask for it. And a lot of the time, they'll do it, particularly at like smaller events where they're more flexible and they're just looking for other ways to like drive revenue. Seat drop one is a tried and true method that I'm sure that they'll be happy to execute for you. The other important thing is like don't do this without asking. So most trade shows will be really upset if you try to take advantage of an opportunity like this. That's obviously one that they would charge for. They are actually in the business of selling sponsorships at their trade show. So be careful with that. You can't get away with like guerrilla events around the show or things outside of the auditorium. And I'm sure you're all familiar with these types of things, right? Like donut carts or food trucks or other kinds of experiences like around the show, like inside the show. Be respectful of the organizers, of course. Develop targeted outreach sequences. So this is a little bit different than the Loom video one. This one's more about driving a sequence of emails. Even if you do the targeted Loom video email outreach, I do suggest you'll have to follow up more than once with those people. But this one is about just creating a sequence of emails that you can send to people. I like to send an email like this no more than 2 times a week. So once or twice a week, I think is good. More than that, you're gonna like really pummel people and they're gonna get frustrated. But a follow up once a week is totally appropriate. And coming up with a narrative that will go across the sequence I think is important. And I'm always surprised to find that like people that never respond, at some point I will talk to them and I'll become aware that they've been reading my emails all along, right? So I think like thinking through the narrative and just coming up with something that's simple, something that's interesting that perhaps works across all the emails can be effective. And it's of course low cost, right? That's why email remains like a really popular channel. Like you don't have to spend a whole lot to reach a lot of people. All right, public teardowns. This was really popular a couple of years ago, and I love it. I actually wish people did more of these things. So Slidebean was the company that was doing pitch decks, and they did lots of like public teardowns and redesigns of startup fundraising pitch decks. They like went back to the original Facebook pitch deck and redesigned it and talked about ways that it could be more effective. I think they did that with Airbnb. They did all of the really popular and well-known startups and talked about their pitch decks and how they could improve it. And I thought this was excellent marketing for a company that was like selling pitch deck design, right? And so you could see how this would work with a lot of businesses, right? Like find something that you're focused on in terms of your product and explain all the ways that it could be done better. Web designers, people that are into like the UI, mobile phone UI, application design, those types of things. I think those are really obvious candidates for this. I could even see it on the go-to-market side, right? About helping optimize people's sales strategy and like, giving feedback about things that people have done in terms of their go to go to market. All right. 14. All right. Making a lot of progress here. So content collaboration. Uh yeah, I put the example of I think my favorite one. So I don't know if people remember this, but when Android did this collaboration with Kit Kat, all of the different Android releases were named after types of candy. But I thought the Kit Kat one was excellent. They really did a partnership with Kit Kat. So yeah, if you can get Kit Kat or Big Candy Brand to part with you, that could be that could be fun. But this is similar to the cross promotion idea that I had before. But the twist here is that it doesn't necessarily have to be someone in the same category or market. If you can find like someone has a perhaps consumer brand or a well-known brand or some brand that aligns really well with what you're doing in your marketing, this can be really effective. I remember many, many years ago, and probably before most people's time on this call, Yahoo did a partnership like this with Pepsi or a soda brand. It was quite interesting. Like it got like a ton of press. I think they did the packaging in the supermarket had the Yahoo logo on it. Quite memorable, like really good at driving visibility and awareness for their brand. I think I even talked to someone who'd worked on it because they were explaining to me like it was a shared partnership. I don't think they had paid for it, but Yahoo had a big enough brand at the time that Coke just wanted to be cool. The internet was the new thing, and they were happy to like work with them on like a branded Coca-Cola bottle that had the Yahoo logo on it, right? So it's similar strategy to what Android had done here. Obviously, that works for like really large companies, but I've seen small companies do this so as well, right? With like a sponsorship perhaps at an event with like a soda or a drink or something that you think your audience might enjoy. Boba guys the one to come to mind. I did something like this at an event I did in San Francisco. We decided like no alcohol. We're going to go full on with boba. And we did something with the boba, local boba brand. And it was really fun and people loved it, right? So you can think big and you can think small. All right, 15. Micro influencer partnerships. So I think this is becoming more popular as people look for new ways to market themselves, given that social media is declining in its ability to get reach for a lot of brands, right? So like brand accounts on X, in my opinion, are completely dead. They don't seem to work at all. I don't know anyone that follows them. I suppose some of the big fast food brands or something have some visibility still, like Wendy's, right? That one's really fun. But for startups, I don't see it's working at all. And on LinkedIn, there's maybe a bit more traction you can get as a brand, and there's some expectation in terms of like how that website works that you need to maintain your corporate account for your startup, but very hard to get traction unless you buy it. But like partnering with an influencer in your space that has a lot of legs. And I see this working really well now with any influencer who's built a newsletter. So there's a lot of newsletters out there, and sponsoring a newsletter that is of a micro influencer in your space, I think is a great way to like take advantage of this idea. And I remember a couple of years ago talking about this, and everyone kind of laughed at me, thinking like, "Oh, B2B AI influencers, like, what does that mean?" And now, like, you see them all over the place, right? There's like an influencer that owns basically every category out there. So I think at this stage, this is a pretty easy one to execute on. You can go to like Substack, look through Beehive. There's a lot of places where you could find these micro influencers. And my experience has always been that newsletters are quite cost effective. So if you do end up paying for it, um, the costs are pretty low usually to reach a captive audience who are enthusiastic and excited about your product, as long as it's like as long as it's a good fit. All right, pop-up experiences for your product. So the example here is this one that Square did when they first launched. I think it's one of the best trade show things I've ever seen. So when they first launched with their credit card reader at a trade show, they made you buy their swag. So they had all these Square T-shirts, and people would come over. In order to get a T-shirt, you had to do a product demo and pay $1 to get like a Square T-shirt. I'll never forget. We're at some event where they had just launched, and they had this giant pile of T-shirts. And a guy on my team came over and he's like, "I just bought this T-shirt," and he was like super excited. I remember in that moment, I was like, "This is the most brilliant uh, trade show marketing idea I've ever seen," right? Because it got everybody to understand instantly how the product worked, and essentially was like a demo, right? So that's probably the best example I could ever come up with doing this. But if you have any kind of like SaaS software, something you can demo on a PC, you can obviously do this, and you can do it do it anywhere. And in the Bay Area, lots of evening events have demo opportunities where you can like take someone through your product. And it's also something I would encourage people to do at trade shows, right? I think people perhaps don't put enough effort and energy into thinking through like how can they run like a really good demo? Can they make it self-service? Can you have a couple of laptops set up so that people can do it on their own? Obviously, depending on the type of product that you have, and we all know that like a product demo is maybe one of the best ways to market any product. All right, partner marketing for webinars. Uh, This is a really obvious one. Basically, everybody does this. In fact, I plan to do it with my webinar next month. I'm gonna have my buddy Paul. I don't know if he's on the chat, but he'll be partnering with me to do a webinar. We're gonna dive really deep into Reddit marketing secrets. Like he is the expert, and I'm really excited to like talk with him about some of the things that he's doing on Reddit. But yeah, I mean, basically every B2B webinar program I ever ran was almost entirely partnerships. We'd find like a customer or we'd get a complimentary brand and we'd partner with them. And that way we could share our audiences and help drive attendance and then have content for the webinar. Become a subreddit authority. So speaking of Reddit, um, I think that this is something that people should really look into. I've been doing a lot on Reddit recently. I think Reddit is now perhaps seen as a way to kind of like fill the gap that people have with Google. SEO traffic is way down for a lot of people, and so Reddit, I think, is the opportunity to try to fill that. And you can see people spending a lot more time on there. Google is favoring Reddit content, so that's driving top of the funnel interest in Reddit overall, increasing its user base. And nearly every topic uh, under the sun is on Reddit, right? So if you were to find communities that are relevant to your product, spend time there, post content, become an expert. It's a tried and true way uh, to use it. I started my own community on there. That's another Reddit idea. You can get your brand or your product area, build something around the category that you're in, post content on there, and then yeah, take advantage of Reddit that way. I always warn people that people on Reddit can be incredibly antagonistic. I got suspended from a community for violating one of their rules, right? Like it's not as perhaps friendly as LinkedIn. So be forewarned if you decide to dive into Reddit. But the rewards can be pretty significant. I've had a couple of things do well over 100,000 views on Reddit and drive a lot of inbound interest and met some fantastic people who I get along with really, really well. So just because you got a lot of antagonistic and angry comments on Reddit doesn't necessarily mean that that's all the people who are on that site. All right, 19. This is the last one. Then we're going to open up for a chat. So roll out an exclusive community features, and generate word of mouth by marketing to small groups. So this is something that a lot of tech companies do. They roll out features only to a small group, get feedback, and use that to like drive word of mouth interest. This is, I think how X was rolling out some features, right? They give them just a group of people that they can test. I'm still excited about X Chat. If anyone knows how to get into that group, I would love to try that. But yeah, I worked at God, Live Journal many years ago. I'm sure it's a platform there's a few people that are familiar with. And we had a pretty sophisticated system around how this works. So LiveJournal was a blogging platform similar to Blogger. It had some different features. It had more kind of a community aspect to it. And what was really interesting at LiveJournal was that we had a group of users that was quite large, maybe like 5,000, that all signed NDAs uh, and were in a beta group that we could test things at a pretty large scale and get feedback from people. It's the only place I've ever worked where we actually had that level of sophistication in terms of like alpha beta type of community that the product team facilitated. We were able to like test things in alpha too. It was excellent. So it depends on your product, depends on your community, and depends on like how things work. But thinking through like how you can build out this type of like early adopter group, so you can get feedback and are really excited about your product, and then help you promote it once it go live is a great idea and one that I've seen work really well. So that was a lot. Okay. So how to apply this, right? So in general, I think people should like focus on a narrow audience in the beginning. Um, and then kind of scale from there. And the other thing that of course like you should do based on this presentation is find the two or three that align best depending on your product, depending on the community and people that you are selling to, right? And of course, this wouldn't be complete without at least a short plug about my business. Everyone knows that I do consulting. I call it micro fractional for founders and early stage companies. But most of my customers say are in the seed stage, so they raise some money and they're able to afford marketing consulting. But I still wanted to have an offering that I thought would work for people that are bootstrapped and pre-seed because I'm really on a mission to help as many founders and startups as I can. And I don't want my offering to be too expensive. So I put together this new thing that I call Vibe Core. So the idea is that you get all of the templates and things that I've worked on. I have this kind of 3 month marketing plan that I put together for startups. I have the ICP builder, a whole bunch of other stuff. And then you'll get an hour of coaching, and then you'll be able to talk to me on Slack for a couple of months and get feedback. I can look at your sales calls, help you with copy, that type of thing, right? So much lower cost approach than the one-on-one consulting. And if you want to learn more, obviously you can click the link or you can use the QR code there. And so that concludes the presentation portion. And so if you guys want to stick around and chat, I'm happy to talk to you all. All right, looks like I got some sting in the chat here. Okay. Mhm. Is Sanders still on? He said something about Discord in the chat here. Maybe we could talk more about that. Um, Nobody wants to speak up. This is funny. Last time I did this, everybody was more than happy to kind of chat. There's only like 5 or 6 people on here, so
Hey Greg, this is Kurt Milne. Hey, do you have any tips or tricks on how to kind of boost email effectiveness? We go to trade shows, we collect leads, we follow up. Um, like, is there a secret sauce for a email, then a LinkedIn, then a phone call, then a paper mail, then like what have you any thoughts on kind of what creates the highest probability of engaging after an event like that?
yeah, great question. I always push multi-channel and for a lot of reasons, right? So we know that like email delivery is difficult, and it seems to be after a couple emails, it can burn pretty quickly, depending on how you do the outreach. I'm not the expert on the technical side of that. Like there are a lot of things you can do to help improve deliverability, right? Like there's some obvious things like depending on if you're doing bulk email, but like removing links and not having too many images, those types of things, right? You can also like build up multiple accounts. There's a lot of ways to kind of manage that. So removing like let's say some of the more technical things on delivering like bulk email, I always encourage multi-channel, right? So send an email, follow up via Slack, follow up with them through other social networks. If you know they're on there, go to them, find them in person. That is one of the things that's always worked for me. It's hard to like perhaps manage at scale, but there's people that I was talking to on like the sales side, having conversations with, maybe they went dark, and then I would run into them at an event, and I actually closed, uh, believe it or not, Redfin. A long time ago, we were pitching them, and we had a lot of conversations with them. I can't remember exactly how it all played out, but there was like a lull in the conversation. Maybe we should frame it that way. And then I ran to them at an event, and then we chatted, we hung out all night, and then like the next day they called back, and then they
Yeah.
uh they went with us.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. No, because I see, I see when I get put on somebody's email sequence, it's like every 4 days for 10, they basically want me to engage or unsubscribe. And then others, I see one or two emails and then nothing. And then, I just wondered uh, what works. But
Yeah,
I
yeah, it's
think that hit them high and low or multiple ways and then try to find them in person is a great strategy.
there's a big debate right now too about like does like scheduled, let's call it scheduled content perform less than non-scheduled content. And like maybe you could even put email into that category. And so anecdotally it seems that like when you just post, like I know this on social media, like when I just like post something and it's not scheduled, it seems to perform better. Like there's theories about like is it so the algorithm or like, no one knows exactly what's going on, but my take is that when you do things that are perhaps let's use from like less scheduled or more based on your own work habits, I think that people can innately tell on the other side. So
Yeah.
when you post something on social media, like it there's no way of like removing the fact that it's going to be relevant to something that's happening in your life or happening in the world, right? I think people can like sense that. And so when your content is like scheduled, it's just really obvious that it's scheduled. And so it just doesn't feel as authentic and as
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, with my own email outreach, I tend to like not schedule it, but I'll schedule like a time. So I'll say like, hey, I got time at 8:30 a.m. from 8:30 to 9. I'm gonna like do this and like so I do it without as many tools and more like I don't know, live, I suppose is the
Yeah.
right term.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
All right, there's some people who've like written some comments in the chat here, so let me like see what I can read through it. Do you have any preferences? And so this is Ted Zipjoy. Is Ted still on? Yeah, Ted's still on. Okay. So Ted, if you want to speak up, go ahead, but I'll read your question. Do you have any preferences in automation tools? Should one build the flows at the start or go manual mode for each of these tactics? A lot of noise around make and I don't know how to pronounce that one. N8N. Is it Nate? Do you know how to pronounce it? And NAN for many aspects of content planning, creation, and orchestration. So yeah, this was I guess what we were just chatting about, right? In terms of like uh, automation, and it's a really big, complicated problem. I don't know if there's any like right or wrong way to do it. Like I was just describing like my own experience with like certain things where doing it like manually or like less scheduled. Um, I found to be more effective, but that's in like sending and posting. I think you're talking about like content content creation. And so on the content creation side, like uh, there's maybe the best way for me to talk about this is like on a spectrum because I think the nuance between like fully automated content and fully manual content isn't quite the right way to talk about this. I think there's a full spectrum of like content creation from like completely manual all the way to totally automated. And so I've always been an advocate for some type of like automated content, like using all these tools. Like whenever people ask me from the very beginning about like content automation or AI, like are you using this um in your workflow or daily life. And I always tell people like, of course, like I want every single advantage that I can get, and I will use every tool out there in order to do that, right? So I subscribe to everything. I subscribe to Claude, I subscribe to ChatGPT. I use the AI note taker Otter, which has AI features. I'm doing all of that, right? But like when it comes to like creating content that I think is authentic and I think it's going to work and I think it's going to break through, I put a lot of effort into like manually writing it. I was even doing something this morning and like I would describe my own technique as like writing with AI. So for me, just very particular about it. I've done a lot of writing, and I don't like the way any of the tools write, like at the highest level. I know just copy and paste it verbatim. I'll spend a lot of effort editing it. It reminds me of like how I used to work with like a junior copywriter. Like I'll be very specific, like rewrite this line, and I'll tell AI like rewrite this line 10 times because I don't like any of these. So I'm not actually writing that line. I'll have AI rewrite it until it gets exactly what I want. And so for me, like that's probably the majority of how I create content. I've been experimenting with like some of the tools that you mentioned, like building these kind of content engines that are trained on a lot of material, and the results are getting pretty good. Like I'm pretty happy with how those things work. I wouldn't use them perhaps for my own content, although I'm still open to the idea that I could perhaps build one trained on all the things that I've written, and it might eventually be able to get fine-tuned to the place where I'd be really happy with the output. What stops me from like doing that is like it sounds like so much effort to get it there that like I'm not really sure I would gain a big advantage over that because I also don't think that like increasing the volume of content is necessarily going to work, right? So the at least the way I interpret this is like the theory is that you train it and then you can vastly increase the volume of content. And I create a lot of content, I tweet all the time. Like volume is not a problem for me how I do it now. And so I don't think any more content would have an impact. I think better content, more timely content, content that's just resonating because it's like more in tune with like what people are talking about or about conversations is what's going to work. And that is like really hard to achieve with AI because I think you need inputs outside of like all the stuff that I've done. You need third party inputs about like what's happening in social media, for example, right now, right? And so like the X API thing has become very expensive. Like there are ways to do all these things. I know all the engineering challenges can be solved, but at the highest level, like are they worth it? And so I don't know the full answer, but that's for me. I've seen things that have been created, let's call it a content engine for certain customers or brands or people out there, and they work really well. They're able to generate content that is really good. And if they don't have a lot of content at the moment, it can be a really effective way for them to generate a lot of high volume content, right? So I think like I said, it's a spectrum. It depends on your needs. And so I don't know, Ted, if that answers your question, but hopefully you got some ideas based on what I took. Yeah. Okay, good. Any other questions? If you want to just type them into the chat.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, thanks for doing this. Um, Building a marketing tool. We're pre-seed, very early, uh, and it's a two-sided marketplace. So unique problems I got to solve there. Uh, but since it's a marketing tool and I'm becoming very acquainted with the problem space, I guess the question I have is, are there tactics, marketing tactics that used to work, that used to be great, and you feel pretty convinced they are not working anymore? If you get this advice, do not do this. This is bad advice at this point going forward.
That's a good question. I haven't ever thought much about it from that perspective. Like, what is bad advice? I mean, I've never been a huge fan of SEO in general. I always thought that like it's hard to game and that a lot of the people doing SEO don't really understand, can't really drive value. I want to be very careful here, right? Because like I do know it works for some people, and like there are people who get a lot of value from it. It was something like I never really thought was worth it. I always looked at it relative to the other options. So, and a lot of places like worked like trying to think of the right way to frame this. I think the right way to frame SEO is this. Like, I think for very small early stage companies, if you can make it work, that's great. You should do that, right? Like I've even made some adjustments to my site. I'd love to get some free SEO traffic. Awesome. But I don't spend a huge amount of effort. I don't have a budget for it. I don't focus on it, right? And that's to some degree where I would draw the line. And so when I was at like a really large company, we had a really in-depth discussion about this. And ultimately our conclusion was that you were better taking those resources and putting them into like advertising, Google search keyword advertising, and not focusing on SEO. And there were a couple famous examples of like, let's call them large companies who had a lot of SEO traffic, and then Google changed the algorithm or changed their offering, and that they no longer had that, right? But if they had bought that traffic and had always thought of it in terms of like advertising and had built the system and people in place and whatever they needed to do it through advertising, they would have been fine, right? And that was the one that we looked at and said, like, look, as a large company where we have a board and we have metrics and quarterly goals we need to meet, like SEO was just way too volatile and risky for us to like build a marketing plan that we were going to commit to delivering on over the quarter or over the year, right? It doesn't mean it can't work, but like just wasn't something that I would rely on. I still feel that way today, that like it's a very volatile and difficult channel to rely on. So if you're like in the stage of the companies we're talking about for the context of my presentation, I think it's excellent. I think people should definitely focus on it. But if you do get it to work, even at like $1 million in ARR, if it all goes away, you're really in trouble, right? So that's like, I don't know if it totally answered your question in terms of like a channel that used to work that doesn't, but that would be my kind of like take on SEO in general, is that like even if you make it work, it's really risky because Google could just at the drop of a hat change how they do things. And we've seen that with AI overviews.
Yeah, exactly. The zero click phenomenon where people aren't clicking search results at all anymore. So SEO is one of the highlighted ones for me that it's currently struggling to figure out what it's going to look like in the future. Uh, I suppose there's any number of other marketing tactics that are struggling right now. Um, so it's just hard to see how AI is going to affect all of this. I see it as just an enormous filter, you know. Uh, I guess what I'm really suggesting is personal AIs that will essentially go out and get you search results and find you deals and things like that, to where you're not even seeing the ad anymore. You're not even seeing the search result anymore. And so I'm, in a way, trying to anticipate that future. I think all the options you highlighted kind of cut through that because you're going directly to the audience where the audience chose to hang out or something like that. So those seem to have a bit more permanence.
Yeah,
So
I
again,
agree. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, all these tactics are things that are like fairly manual. But the goal is to get out in front of your audience and do something that is really exciting and resonates with them. They're also like maybe bottom of the funnel, perhaps. Like all these things assume that like you have a really interesting brand, you have content and a great product that customers are excited about. And so you just need to get it in front of them and of course do it in a clever way. But just go into all the channels that most of the at scale ways don't work, right? You can't use SEO inside Slack. You can't buy keywords inside Discord, although I'm sure they'll come up with advertising at some point. But all these things tend to be these like closed communities or closed methods or places where there's like a curated audience, which I think have always been perhaps one of the best ways to do B2B marketing. Um, and I think that that's going to be the future. I think what you're talking about with AI, the at scale stuff is going to just get really tough. And so how do you get into Discord and how do you use Slack and how do you find people on Reddit? And like I think there was a term at one point people were using called like dark social, which I think is a it's not my favorite term, but I think that that concept is really powerful. And I think there's gonna be way more of that in the future. So you have this world where like there's all these agents running around and they're just creating all kinds of content. It's just going to be abused and it's going to create all kinds of noise out there that'll make it really, really difficult to get your message through and expensive, right? We didn't even talk about like bots in advertising. Like no one knows exactly what percentage of like clicks are fake, but like a certain percentage for sure are. And with AI, it seems to me that it would be easier to do that, not harder. The other thing I think that what you're bringing up that I think is important is like I think authenticity in content is going to become uh really powerful, and maybe that's the answer to like why the like I don't know the right term for it, but like live posting or like real time uh content posting works better than scheduled stuff. And people can just tell that things are scheduled and they seem inauthentic. And being on the Slack community and like posting something that you have written and then replying to someone's comment and then giving an emoji like that whole thing like shows that like it's most likely the real you, and you're engaging in like a really authentic experience. And I think people innately just want that.
I wonder how relevant that word you just said, experience, is going to be to the future of marketing. I just got back from a conference and um, walking in the door, they had all these very immersive booths where you would walk through them and it was an entire experience. They had built a Blockbuster video and you went in and you had to get a Blockbuster video card and you would rent a movie off the shelf. Very immersive. The entire conference was like that. And so this idea of like capturing your attention, having a story to tell, some kind of relationship forming and all that, it was unlike any conference I'd ever been to. So I wonder how important that is going forward. I'm seeing more chief experience officers. Maybe that's a rebrand of chief marketing officer, but it seems like I'm connecting some dots here. Maybe that word is important in the future of marketing. What experiences are you creating?
What conference was that?
Consensus.
Okay, in Vegas.
This one was in Toronto.
Okay, in Toronto. That's cool. I mean, I think, well, I think there's a few things happening. So I've been going to like a lot of events, which I hadn't done for a while. They seem to be back in a big way. I feel like COVID like changed things pretty dramatically, and for whatever reason, it took a while for people to like reboot and get comfortable with like just doing things in the real world. I think last year was the first time I was asked to go to like a trade show, and then I went to like a bunch. But prior to that, like I hadn't really gone out and done a lot of things in the real world, right? So I think that that's one dynamic overall. People are doing things in the real world, so they're investing in trade shows. It's just a thing that people are. It's just a trend. I'm not even sure there's like a really good explanation for it. Yeah, sure, like people want to do it, but it's just something that people are experiencing, and maybe it's a reaction to like COVID, the overemphasis of online and digital, just a desire to get out there and experience things in the real world. And like marketers are responding to that, right? They're seeing that like, hey, people are hungry for these types of tactile, like real world experiences, and so they're giving them to people. Prior to the pandemic, trade shows were the largest line item in terms of budget at every like startup I'd ever been at. Like it was like a given. Like we just spent all the money on trade shows. And then the pandemic kind of flipped the script where like there's no more trade shows. And so what do you do with that budget? And people put it into all kinds of stuff, right? Like webinars and advertising. And I kind of feel like, and from my perspective, given that history, we're just going back to the way things used to work. Like trade shows were just, for whatever reason, the way that business gets done. right? And so you're talking about your explanation or description of the booth. Like I remember like Salesforce always does these really elaborate booths. Like they almost look like Disney or something, and they're fantastic, right? They're really fun. They have that Trailblazers theme and narrative that they use, and they create like just a wonderful uh, experience, right? It's excellent. So yeah, I absolutely think there'll be a lot more emphasis and investment on live events. And then for like startups, I've been going to events. There's all kinds of stuff happening here in Seattle, the Bay Area too. There's like an event almost every night. And if want to take advantage of that, like just get on the presentation list, get on there and like, participate in the events. You can get involved as being an organizer. I ran a whole series of events in San Francisco at one point. It was a ton of work, but it was really fun and really rewarding. And I got to meet a lot of great people.
Fantastic. I'll add that to the conference schedule. But thanks again
Where
for putting this
where are
together,
you
Greg.
calling from, Chris?
I'm from Orlando, Florida.
You're in Orlando now?
Yep.
I see. Yeah, so maybe not as many meetups and things happening around Orlando, though maybe there are.
Nah, no.
Yeah.
City's too big and flat.
But like even if you live in an area like that, right? Like you could still go to Miami or plan a trip or get out there and like and participate in them and like I think too like so if you're a small company, the smaller events tend to be the ones that I think are easier for you to make an impact on, right? So the giant trade shows in Las Vegas, it's really, really hard if you're a small company to break through. I usually recommend like maybe attend, but do not like spend a lot of money on building a booth or any of that stuff. But go and like you can meet people and try to like perhaps um put together a target list and reach out in advance and really take advantage of it that way. But if you go to like a smaller event, it's much easier to kind of just network and talk to people and get a lot of value just from like showing up. It's perhaps like a little like less effort and more impact. I met all kinds of people at just small local meetups who've become great friends, customers, people that like I've hired. I totally think it's worth it, and people should really explore like their kind of like local startup or technology events.
Yeah, definitely.
Anybody
Again,
else want
true
to?
said.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
have another question?
Good.
Or yeah, I have
Uh,
another like 25 minutes, so I'm happy to keep going.
Open it up for other people. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, thank you. I saw Jake just popped on again. I don't know if that's I can't even tell anymore like if it's a note taker or not. Looks like there's a bunch of note takers in here. Uh, but if anybody else wants to ask a question or you want to type them into the chat, like go for it. But like I said, I got another 20 minutes. If people want to keep talking, I'm happy to uh keep going. All right, do you have any questions or did I cover everything?
Quick question from my end, able to hop on audio now. If there were an order of operations to some of this, let's say you didn't have any marketing presence out there, where would you start? I know there's things like warming up the socials, making sure that you can actually send emails, but I'm just saying, best bang for your buck, more so in the time side of things, what would your playbook be? Particularly, the use case for me would be a SaaS product oriented at Instagram creators to help them better understand their content more from a semantic level. So call it like creative insights, if you will. So I don't know if the product matters a ton, but just to give you a sense of like the ideal user would be like Instagram creators that are seeking to grow, but again, maintain that authentic voice along the way.
Yeah, do you have is your product available in market? Do you have paying users? What's the stage?
Yeah, so we're very early on, so have a working product now. The end goal is to have, eventually kind of like a SaaS where they can log in and do some of these analysis on their own. But right now, the end deliverable is essentially a report. So think about like more traditional social listening, like Talkwalker, Meltwater, where there's certain services that provide that as a report to a business to understand their industry, their audience. We're kind of going with that for now, but eventually it'll
Mhm.
be on demand. So the funnel right now is, basically testing it with and building this with a friend that is an influencer kind of creator type of person, and basically just been getting that early product feedback with some his peers. And so we're kind of at
Yeah,
that stage of solid feedback. How do we, start to get people to pay for it, kind of find the price and those types of things.
yeah. So I think given where I understand you're at, like you might want to like reframe the stage as like one of those VIP beta ideas, right? So I have another customer who I'm working with where we changed it like on the book a meeting. I think it said get on the wait list, and then we got better results that way. And I think we went to book a meeting and then we went back to get on the wait list. So just kind of like positioning it more as like early insider private kind of thing. That would be my best suggestion is that like if you're still trying to like kind of figure it out, make it sound cool and exclusive and put some friction into participating, right? So you'll filter for people who like are really excited about it and will put up with like all the quirks. And they won't have the same kind of expectations of people who are like, I gave it $20 and like now this thing doesn't work, right? Which is terrible. Like you don't want to be there. And so if you put like this kind of like velvet rope around your product, there's a lot you can do to drive interest, right? Like you can like build this wait list and then send people email. You can have like the founder call thing I talked about, right? Like, hey, if you're in the private beta, you can come to like some kind of office hours thing and give us some ideas and feedback about what you're doing, what me and might like to see in the product in the future. So yeah, that would be kind of like my initial take.
Awesome. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like, what have you tried?
So again, it's been more, very early on in the process. In the past, I've built other products that were more, like you had mentioned, community based. Those are more Web3, so a lot of that happens on your Telegrams, Discords. There's a lot of like token incentives that can go alongside of it, and this is more of a new play to me, kind of a little bit unfamiliar. Obviously, um, starting to build a wait list, as far as like you had said running some Instagram ads just because that's where our bulk of our audience is. That's where the data we get is. And have had okay interest in it. I think it's just a matter of a little bit of just getting it into the world. We're kind of in that getting the house in order before we invite the guests. And I think, I don't know, there's probably a little bit of mental block there to just say, do the marketing before the product is ready. But just wanted to let you know as we just pick your brain rather as we pivot to that part. I've been heads down on product, and now I just kind of need to, fix the debt on the marketing side of things.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so the universal advice I have for like let's call it like pre-seed startups in general is always be in this kind of like two things like so you want to always start marketing before you launch. So you always have a splash page, collect emails, like get on social, like you talked about like warming everything up, right? You have to do that before you launch. You don't want to like launch and then not have anybody to talk to. It's if you think of it that way, it's ridiculous, right? Like why would you wait, right? So the splash page can be really simple, it can be really involved, right? You can put a lot of detail, you could put like a little bit of detail. So you always want to have that before you launch, right? And then when you launch or however you approach it, I always advocate for these like beta groups, beta testing. Like you could still say it's like publicly available, but still have a core group of people that you're like close to that you can get feedback from, that you can give like special treatment because you'll want to get like testimonials from them. You want to get case studies from them. You want to be able to like have this core group of people that are going to drive word of mouth, right? So from a conceptual level, you always want to be marketing before you launch. When you launch, you need to have and foster and build an elite community, an elite group of people that are going to help drive word of mouth, right? And then it's just a matter of like how you like almost experiment with that stuff to kind of grow, right? Like we had book a meeting and then we went back to join the wait list, right? Like it's okay to like go back and forth. There's no one like paying that close attention to you. And if anyone does call you out, just be like, hey, we changed your mind. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like your company, your startup, don't be afraid to pivot. I think people get really stuck in this mentality that they feel like they have to commit to something and you don't, right? I heard someone say the other day to me that like, if you're not failing, this is bad. Like if you're not getting negative feedback, sometimes it's really bad because it means you're waiting too long to have too much information, and then you're missing opportunities before you do anything, right? And I'm trying to take that to heart too, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I like everything to just be a certain way. Like I was even describing like writing, like use AI to rewrite a sentence 20 times. Like it's kind of ridiculous, but it's just who I am, and that's okay. So I'm trying to like push myself actually to like push more things out there, get more early feedback. Even my offering today, right? This like Vibe Core, this $500 like package. Like I'm not going to retire on this thing, but I believe in it, and I think there might be an audience out there, and I want to find a way to like test it. And so I figured I would launch it at my webinar and go for it, right? And that's not probably what I would have done if someone had said to me like, take more risks, be more open to failure, and just try things, right? And so that's what I would suggest to you is just like keep trying things, keep trying to build this early group of people who are committed to what you're doing, and they'll be excited. Like they'll even like find the journey fun. Like, oh, they tried this thing, but they went back and then they did this. And like, just like you talk about other startups or other products that you've been a fan of from the beginning, right? I mean, think like X is the ultimate example. Like they truly are like a startup at a massive scale. They break things all the time. They roll out products and roll them back. Like some things work, some things don't. And I love it. And I think to some degree, that's what keeps me there is that like they still run it just like a startup, and it's human and it's authentic, and they make mistakes, and it's far from perfect, and that's how like real people are, and people can relate to that.
That's no, it's super helpful. And I'd say there's been a bit of, I've always had the marketing team behind me, saying like having a full omni-channel strategies, all the tools to orchestrate a team of creators. And this is more of the first solo venture. And so that is helpful. I think I just have to lower the mental barrier bar a little bit for myself. Like you said, always balancing the perfectionist side and then just dedicate the time on the product side. I mean, sorry, on the marketing side. I mean, heads down on product, but again, it doesn't matter until there's, people interested or, the end goal is to get it into the world. So it doesn't matter if it exists just on, in mind.
Yeah, 100%. And like most marketing people too are used to like working with like established brand or product and budget. You got to remember like marketing has a lot of like hyper specialists. It's very different from a lot of other disciplines out there. Like in sales, everyone does sales. Everyone's measured on how much money they bring in. It's quite simple. Engineering, to my surprise, was more similar than I thought it was. Like a lot of engineers can kind of bounce around different kinds of technology. They all know something about the back end. They have different kind of like areas of focus, but it's not like marketing where you've got people who are just like, I am like a UI design expert, or I am like a long form white paper content generator. I am a Instagram social media specialist, right? Like it's so hyper specialized that I think it drives this greater perception that marketing needs to be done in a certain way. It needs to be orchestrated by CMO, and like, well, perhaps it's true at like a large scale for an early stage company. It's not realistic to do it that way. And it's not going to get you where you need to go. But the problem is like most people you talk to, that's their worldview. So of course they advocate for like doing Instagram the most perfect way or the most beautiful UI design you can imagine. So you got to like kind of break out of that. It's a lot of what I try to do. And like for whatever reason, like I've been good at that. Like I've done a lot of things in marketing, but I'm very comfortable with the early stage. And I don't know, I guess I like the messiness of it all. Like I think it's fun. I think gives us an opportunity to like do things that you wouldn't normally do in like a large company because expectations are really different. And I love new technology, right? So I love like adopting new tools, like playing around with new things that come out, like trying to see if I can get traction here. The whole process of like inventing and innovation and doing things, right? Like I went on Reddit, I had no idea what I'm doing. I'm like posting stuff on there, people like banning me and suspending me, but I still got the result that I wanted. It's unfortunate that like it's the learning curve is so high over there. Like it seems quite it's quite ridiculous. And I'll share with you like the thing that got me suspended was I wrote a post that did like 100,000 views and it got like some really negative, angry comments. But there was one person that was really nice, positive, and they asked me like who I was because it's like very anonymous on there. And I just said, "Hey, I'm Gregor Bow, and here's a link to my website." And I got flagged as like self promotion, and they suspended me for 30 days. I was like, "Holy smokes!" Right? But that's part of like the learning curve, right? You're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay.
No, very helpful. Appreciate the personal stories too. Again, new to me, but it's it is inspiring. So I just appreciate that too because it's this level of kind of soloing it is very new, and it's good to hear that there's fruit at the end of it, even though it might be a little bit messy along the way.
I think we underestimate how hard it is to be a beginner and make mistakes because you get older, like you're used to being the expert, you're used to like having a lot of skill, and then going into something new where you're not good at it, it's super scary, right? You're just in this situation that's like really uncomfortable. And so I think that's why a lot of people shy away from it, right? So there are ways to mitigate that too. Like you could create uh some other Instagram account to give you the opportunity to kind of play around, right? I think that's what drives a lot of the anonymous accounts on Twitter. They're obviously run by people who are like very well educated, very experienced, have a lot of knowledge, and it's a way for them to kind of have a little sandbox. This may be perhaps a very positive view of these things, but like there's definitely people out there who are doing it because like they want to be able to test and learn and like post things and like fail in public without it being uh very obvious who they are because like they're definitely run by people who have a big name and reputation. I know that for sure. I can tell. But it gives them a way to kind of like experiment with things and do things in a way that like, oh my God, not that it's Mark Andreessen, but like if he did a bunch of dumb stuff, he'd be like, what a loser. I can't believe it. Right. He's so incredible. So when you're someone like that, where there's a lot of expectation around like everything that you do should turn to gold, it can be nerve-wracking, right? To try to get in to do something new and experiment and test and learn. And so that's why I think for everybody, like are there ways that you could do this and like semi-anonymously or just go about it in a way where like the 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 consequences of if you fail aren't as great, right? So like on Reddit, I like an idiot. I used my real name too. Maybe I should have like I thought about that. I was like, maybe I should have created a new account. And I just was like, I don't care. I'm just gonna like go for it. And it was fine. So I've been successful and it's okay. Like my suspension will end in like in 10 days. So I'm all right with it. But I did create anonymous accounts at one point on Twitter and like experiment a lot with it. It's a very interesting experience. I don't know if anyone here has done that, but definitely recommend it because you can kind of like assume a different persona and role and you'll get like really different feedback. It's kind of wild actually to see how different the response from people can be. For me, it illustrates the power of like brand and the power of content that like however you present yourself to the world is definitely influencing the way that people respond back. And there's no better way to like really understand that in an intuitive way than to like assume some other role and then watch how people respond to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for this was really a helpful session and I appreciate it. I'll let others jump on if there's any other questions, but this was very, very helpful.
Yeah, yeah, I got a couple more minutes. I thought I saw Kurt went off mute. I don't know if he's still around, if he wants to ask things. It looks like we've got like a couple of people here.
No, I really appreciate the conversation and especially for kind of a startup where there's one person in the marketing department, it's super helpful to have conversation and interaction around these challenging topics. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I actually don't think there's a lot of like feedback or places to go if you're in that situation and get good advice. I think
Yeah.
you can find a lot of people complaining, but to get like people who are like supportive and like, I think it's cool. Like I think being the first marketer in a startup is an excellent opportunity and it's really fun.
It is, but then, it's just interesting because speaking marketing with the engineers or the sales team, can sometimes be challenging, right? So it's nice to have birds of a feather.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're not getting the feedback in like a larger organization where you have other marketing people to in the same way, right?
Yep.
And so yeah, that's something even I struggled with too when I was like in an early stage company and a small startup. The fun thing though is that sometimes the engineers get really excited when you do a good job of marketing, and the bar can be lower. In fact, I had the founder of one of the companies that I was marketer at. He sent me some t-shirt that I made, and he was like, he's still like really proud of some of the work that we did. Ran this hackathon, and he found the hackathon t-shirt in his closet, and he sent me pictures like, remember this, blah blah blah. So they could be very appreciative as well because like the way I always described it to the engineering team is that a lot of things in marketing to them are like they're literally voodoo. Like they don't understand it, and I can't fully explain it. It doesn't have the same relationship where you put in A and B comes out, right? You sometimes have to do things that are counterintuitive or approach things in a more like roundabout way that don't seem um obvious and to get the result that you want. PR is the one I always talk about
Yeah.
because like PR is my favorite example. So I don't I don't control anything that the journalist says or does or anything, right? They work for a different company. And then I don't control what the CEO says or who the person is the spokesperson. They don't generally work on my team. But my job is to get the CEO to say the things I need them to say, and then get the writer to write the things I need the right the I need the writer to write. And it's like, how do you do that? Like, neither of those
Yeah.
people work for you. You don't pay them. It's against the rules, right? Or it's a faux pas to like pay the writer to do what you want. But that is your job. Like, make this outcome. So it's like literally like a voodoo doll. Like you just kind of stick pins in and hopefully you'll get the result that you want. So like someone who's like very technically minded, like that is like really hard for them to understand. So that's why I always use it as an example. Like what are the kind of things you need in marketing and how is this different from a lot of other things in the company? So PR is a great example. Like that's my job. How do I do it?
Yep. Well, and the other thing that's a challenge, it's an interesting topic is, you're working with folks presumably that are experienced and they've worked with marketing at other companies and things like that. And so it's really hard to kind of anticipate what's going to work and you don't want to lean back on here's how it worked when I was at VMware 10 years ago, right? Like, so there's a lot of, you want to kind of bring a experience, but then also assume that you don't know what works. And then
Like,
try to divine what we should do with our $5,000 a month marketing budget. It's like, uh, so that's an interesting balance that it would be fun to talk about sometime is how do you kind of wade into it with experience, but without preconceived notions of what works this 6 month period didn't work last 6 month period even. So, that's an interesting
100%. And
balance
then
to
a big
strike.
company with like a giant budget and all kinds of resources, it doesn't translate. Yeah. I had this funny experience recently. Like I was writing something with ChatGPT and it came up with a bunch of like marketing examples that were like, it's like, I was like, how old are these things? Like, are you
Right.
kidding me? Like, come up with some more recent examples. Like, I'm like, this is crazy. Yeah, I think that part's really important, right? To find like our knowledge expires, I think, a lot faster than we understand and things that can seem like they were yesterday were 10 years ago, right? Like even my presentation, I was trying to come up with some of the examples in here, and I had to I had to put a lot of effort into like making sure they were current, right? Like blue sky, right? That's the cool new thing. And even that's been around for a couple of years, right? All the examples can't be from like, 2008 and 2009.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, this is great. Hey, I'm glad you guys stuck around and did the Q&A session. I'll send I'm gonna post this on YouTube and I will send out the presentation. And hey, if you guys are interested in coaching, I'll send a link to that as well. And yeah, I plan to do these once a month. I think it'll be the last Wednesday of the month, and the next one will be on Reddit marketing. And then I even have
That'd be
someone
great.
lined up. Yeah, that one. I think that one's going to be really well attended. And I had another one on cold email. I also have a buddy who's working on some cold email tools, and he's really good at cold email. And so, did you even ask her? Like, actually, a couple of people asked about email. So we'll do something
Right.
that's more domain specific on email.
That'd be awesome. Great topics. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, hey, thank you. Have a good day.
All right.